Hello, everybody. Hey, Travis Turner here. Just so excited that you've tuned in. We've got a great episode on intentional living. I've got a great friend, a longtime friend, all the way from Arizona. Pastor Darryl Carnley is going to be with me. He's going to share some information about missions and the My 360 project. Thanks for tuning in. Well, hello, everybody. And hello to you, Pastor Darryl Carnley. Man, it's so awesome to have you back in Idaho again. Again, yes. We've had some incredible history, and I just want you to know, man, that I've really enjoyed your friendship over, I think, this last 14 or 15 years. It's been a while.
Long time.
Yeah. You've decided to stay with me, and I with you, and that's always a good thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, knowing each other's shortcomings.
We're not good quitters.
Yeah, we don't quit well.
We don't quit well.
No, it's really.
I wish I could quit eating a lot, though. If I could just stop that.
Yeah, we've got an incredible topic, today that we're going to be talking about, and this is something that I know is near and dear to your heart. In fact, the ministry, the business the foundation that you're leading right now, and have started has everything to do with going, and you've given it a really cool name, Goology.
Yeah,
I love that. But anyway, we're going to talk about the importance of going. But for our listeners, if you would please, on intentional living, if you would just kind of tell them a little bit about yourself and who you are and where you came from and the cool things that God's doing in your life.
Awesome. Well, Pastor Travis, first, thanks for having me back.
Yeah.
It's always nice to be invited back. I'm surprised, But no, I of course, name is Darryl Carnley, born and raised in Alaska. I'm a fourth-generation missions kid or pastor's kid. My father actually felt the call to Africa. And this was I was reminded of this just a few days ago, speaking with my eldest sister. But he ended up in Alaska and never went to Africa, and actually had a lot of connections there with some missionaries, the Freemans, things like that, the Crumpackers, but never got to go. But he was a missionary contractor to Alaska, went there in 1952 and built multiple churches. And of course, I was born and raised there, and never thought I would live in Alaska past college, never wanted to pastor. I mean, I seen the underbelly of it all. I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't want to do that. I want to go make money and have a Porsche and all those things. But
did you ever get your Porsche?
I did, actually, for a short time. Had a really nice 944. But insurance was $900 a month or something crazy. So it was short-lived. I made some money on it. But missions, I know the topic today is missions, I believe.
Sure.
It is quintessentially everything about who we are as believers is missions. And so I'm excited to talk with you and give you what little knowledge I have. But it is our life, and I love it. And everyone is on mission.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I love your modesty. You have a little bit of information. I believe that this year, if I'm correct, is going to be your 20th trip to the continent of Africa. You've been all over Africa, but certainly there's a sweet spot for both of us in Uganda specifically. In fact, that's where I met you for the first time 14 or 15 years ago, however long it was, and I know you're dying to share a story.
Well, it was. You flew in late.
Yes.
We were there a few days in the Segaku house. Yeah, you came in, met you. Of course, you had jet lag, and Now, you had been to the Philippines before. You had done some international travel, so you weren't new to it. But I think about 2 that morning, because you were the last in, so you were on the top bunk. You know how that goes.
And you got to tell these people, this isn't just bunk beds
it's not an American bunk bed. There is no OSHA. There is no.
It goes about 10 feet off the ground.
It's a ways up there. In fact, you're pretty close to the ceiling. And I don't. You didn't have the little bumper on the side, 2x4 or whatever they use.
Well, this is the deal. They just finished that guest house, and they just finished those bunk beds that week. In Uganda, they put the board up against the wall.
It was backwards.
The safety board up against the wall.
So, yeah, it was funny. So Pastor Travis, midway through the night, none of us knew him. I don't even think Pastor Joe was there
No, he
at
wasn't.
that particular time, and who was our mutual friend who got me going. And I went to Africa with him in '99, and then you, of course, came later. But about 2 a.m, I mean, you'd come in late. We met you, talked a little bit. You're sleeping. I hear this thud, And I think right below you was Stephen Cuesa, Pastor Cuesa, who, boom, the light comes on and your face down on the floor. And you didn't know where you were, what was going on.
And all I saw was the darkest black men that I've ever, we just with, and everybody's just shocked.
I think I'm the only one laughing.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't know you, but I got so tickled. I mean, you're boom, and it was just like you had just arrived from like the Matrix, And you were looking around, and it, of course, didn't hurt you. I mean,
that was honestly the grace of God, because it was a concrete floor.
And it was.
Oh
God, it had to be 8 feet.
6 or 7
6
feet.
I mean, it was up there.
Like
they build those high, and you just bam, and got up, and we, of course, got you back in. But it was true. It had been put backwards. I think maybe we spun it around then, because we didn't want you to do it again, because there was no other space, I
think in the middle of the night, I was searching for Tina. You know what I mean?
That's what it was.
Rolling.
Leg over or something. But so that's how we met. You fell out. You just dropped from the sky.
And I'm telling you, I did not wake up until, that's a hard way to wake up, but I didn't wake up until, I didn't wake up in the fall to brace myself. No. So for me to be able to fall flat like that.
And you'd flown like 32 hours. Back then it was 32, 38 hours, something like that. And you would just, boom. And it was, I mean, over the light come on, you're like, where am I? You're Marine Corps, you're cool.
Completely discombobulated.
But that was how we met. And,
I think we had some guy speaking in tongues over in the corner.
Something was going on. It was wild. But what's funny about that trip? I don't remember much after that. I honestly don't. Now I do remember a trip where you was on a ladder that was built for a small person,
Ugandan.
And you were up with a bow and arrow, and I'm sitting there, and I think Pastor G was there, and he leans over, and he didn't know you that well, and he goes, "What's he going to do?" And I said, "I have no clue." I said, "I'm just going to videotape it. That's all I know." And you had a great point, but it was the point, you're up, and that I'm like, "Oh God," But we've had some great times over there.
Some good times.
Wow, God moving, and just people just touched and saved. And to this day, some of our best of friends, I mean, Pastor Robert Kazozzi, and of course, Pastor Cuesa went on to be with the Lord.
Yes.
But thanks to Pastor Joe for introducing us to Africa.
Incredible.
And, wonderful.
I honor Pastor Joe for that kind of, being that forerunner, and then bringing other people in. And of course, you'd been there since 93, 94, and me many years later. But it's kind of cool how our lives intertwine, and our connections are a lot of times much smaller than you would ever consider. But
exactly.
Anyway, that was fantastic. I want to hear, and I want our listeners to hear today about the My 360 project. I mean, missions has always been important to you.
Absolutely.
And it's been really a way of life. You've always been one to go, always, at least for as long as I've known you.
Yeah.
And senior pastored for many years, and then that kind of came to an end. And then you were able just to dive headlong into going and meeting an incredible need through the My 360 project, which you've started. And can you tell us just a little bit about what that is and why it's so important?
Yeah, let me start with the word goology and then move to My 360, because it all fits. Years ago, I started preaching, and I would capitalize G-O in the gospel.
Okay.
Go-ospel. 2/3 of God is go.
Sure.
The most expensive word in the Bible is 2 letters, go. And I lost an incredible missionary friend just last year, actually 2020, January 1st, a Carl missionary. He lost his life on the mission field because he was going. So it's not anything for the weak and faint at heart. And so years ago, I come up with a word called goology. I threw ology on the end, but goology is the study of going with a Christ-centered purpose. Wow. And so since then, we've launched a network. It's kind of a private thing on Facebook.
Put that on a T-shirt.
Yeah, we're going to do that. But the study of it, because a church or a person who is a believer that's not going is not growing.
That's right.
Bottom line.
Yeah, going is growing.
You cannot have the gospel and the good news in you and not be sharing it.
Yeah.
Now, here's the difference. It's different ways that we share it. You know, don't make me stand on a street corner with a megaphone as my dad did to me when I was 7. It was not my comfort zone, but that's how I started. So you have different ways to go. And when I was coming to a conclusion as a senior pastor, I knew it was happening. God gave me Numbers chapter 8, verse 24, and it was at 50. I was turning 50, that I knew there was something to take place different in my life, in the ministry, and still be a pastor. And you're looking for need. We know, first off, there's people that need Jesus. I mean, that's just a given, and I don't want to ever take that away from what I was doing. But I had been in the box church for a long time, a lot of missions, Africa, all over. In fact, been to over 100 countries in my life, and traveled a lot, and love it. I mean, I love traveling. But I also believe you should go local to global. And when the Lord was launching me out to more mission foreign, prior to that, he had really convicted me one day sitting in my office as a pastor. He said, Darryl, I know you like to go to Africa, but what about your neighbor across the street, you know? And so I really come up with what I call the local to global strategy. I mean, you work, and even as we're sharing this, anyone that is watching this, you don't have to go to Africa to be a goologist. You don't have to go to Philippines or Nicaragua. It's right in your own community.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it's finding that niche. But one of the things I was praying for was a widget. I said, and I had gotten involved, when I left Alaska in 2012, I had been offered a job with an organization that does coffee. And I was going to do it, and they were going to allow me to base out of Springfield, Missouri, where my wife is from, that area. And when we left Alaska in August 2012, I got there in September. In fact, came through here and visited and actually preached, I think. And when I got to Arkansas, or got to Missouri, the owner of the company decided that he wanted me to base out of Little Rock. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I never really liked living in Alaska. I mean, I'll be honest with you. It was a calling, but it was not my destination. Right. But I did it for 43 years, sure. Begrudgingly at times, but with love, because I love people. I didn't want to live there. And then God opened a door for me to come here to Idaho and pastored for a period of time. And one day, Andrew Palau, I'm dropping names, but Andrew Palau, Toby Mac's brother-in-law, yes. If anyone want to know, called me, knew I had been looking. I had called Andrew one day, and I said, Andrew, God's leading me, and I had traveled with him to different places in the world, and he called me, and he said, I want you to meet a person. And long story short, I met a person who had come up with an idea for shoes, and it just ended up not working out, but it gave me an idea. Because what I found, and I had been doing shoes for a long time. I had been doing dress shoes in Africa, and mainly cleats. Play It Again Sports. The largest Play It Again Sports was in Fairbanks, Alaska, still is. And they would collect cleats. I would take them to Africa and give them to the kids, and it was wonderful.
Tremendous outreach. There's
massive,
incredible ways to preach the gospel through.
A guy named Moses.
Soccer.
I think you probably met Moses.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, they actually have a kid that played. He's playing pro now.
It's incredible.
From that in Mazalita.
Yeah.
So anyways, I knew shoes was a deal, but what I didn't know is this. 300 million kids in the world don't have shoes. And 11 million kids die before their 5th birthday, many times lacking shoes because of illnesses that come through the feet.
Right.
One called jiggers. So I blew my mind. I mean, when this was brought to me, I was emotional. And you know me, I can get emotional pretty quick. But I was like, uh-oh. And there was like an aha moment. And I began to research and search.
First of all, you've got incredible connections.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, God timing, utilizing the connections that you have. It's a beautiful, beautiful relationship. That's what God does.
I was coming to a conclusion June 2015 in Idaho. Pastor Roger Yaden, who's doing a wonderful job there, stepped in. I was leaving. I took a few months off on my way to Phoenix. Ended up in New York with Andrew. And I had this idea. I met someone from Nike who was one of the vice presidents. His name is Wilson Smith, who I had met earlier and didn't realize. It is a funny story in itself, but don't have time to tell it, other than that particular morning I got up and I told Pauline, we were staying at the Trump Hotel, and I told Pauline, I said, I'm going down and I'm going to meet someone from Nike today. I'm going to do this shoe idea.
Sure.
And she's like, well, Nike's on the West Coast. And I said, yeah, it is. It's everywhere. I went down, and sure enough, God opened a door for me to meet Wilson Smith, who is a phenomenal man of God. He opened a door for me to meet a guy named Mike Freeton, who is one of the top designers at Nike. Right. Designed Michael
Jordan.
Not Michael. He worked with Michael Jordan, but Michael, one of the fast runners, I forget. But LeBron James. I mean, some crazy stuff. In fact, you watch the movie Back to the Future, the automatic lacing shoes. That was one of Mike's designs.
Wow.
And connects me with Mike and a guy named Tom Barron. And wow, it was amazing. And that was August that I got to meet with him in 2015. Then I came to your church, and this is what's special for me today, being here. September 2015, you had a conference. You asked me to come in and speak. And at that conference, it was the first time I had stood in front of anyone and said, I don't know how this is going to work, but we're designing a shoe that isn't built in a factory, but we can work with ministries that are rescuing women from human trafficking. We can put people to work. We're going to wash these kids' feet, and we're going to build, and I mean, it was speculation. In fact, it was a pastor friend I was with one time, and he said, faith is the closest thing that Christians have to lying. And I'm going to tell you, I stood in the old sanctuary stage here, and I cast a vision, had no clue. I was jumping out of the aircraft with all the parachute material, building it on the way down. I had no clue. I had left a job. I didn't have any finance. I did not leave, Celebration Life. They gave me 3 months severance. I had 3 months money. Into September, you gave me an offering. I was going to Phoenix with not a lot of money. I mean, and we went, and the Lord began to open doors. And by January 2016, the My 360 project was birthed. And where the name come from, I'm driving through a canyon in Arizona. If you ever go to Arizona, there's a lot of canyons. And I don't know why I remember this canyon, but I'm going into it, and the Lord just started downloading with me. He said, I felt this. I mean, I want you to name this the My 360 Project. It was an odd name. I mean, I even had people go, what is that? I've had people say, you can't do it. And I said, but what's interesting is as I broke it down, I felt like the Lord said to call it My, because he said, I want you to teach people to become selfish again. Now, that sounds strange, selfish.
Yeah, it's not a word that you would think would come from the Lord. But
you love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
And then the 360 was, you got to create something that everyone is affected. And then the project, you and I know, being married, wives give us projects. Isn't it crazy when you finish one of those projects, how you feel? I mean, I was at your house. I stayed some years ago, and you were painting. Something was going on. And then another time I came, and you know what you did? You showed, I finished it. I mean, you're like, like when we do the dishes, when we do the dishes, it's like,
I'm like, babe, did you see this? Did you see what I just did?
It's right here,
When she
it's a project. So what we wanted to create was something that had multiple facets. In fact, sometimes hard to explain, but it ultimately comes down to a shoe. The widget is the shoe that a child gets blessed with, but then the people that build it, it's not a factory. It's not, you press a button, you're creating a job, you're sourcing in country, you're trying to eliminate toxic charity. And so there was a lot going on. And so I think it was so important that God put me in a desert. I mean, now, I'm a hard-headed person, so I think Saul to Paul only had to hang in the desert for 2 years, but I've been there for 6. That's just Darryl. It's 43 years stuck in Alaska. Moses was only 40 years.
Right.
in the wilderness. But it was one of those things where I had to come up with an elevator speech, and it's taken me forever, because you'd be flying on a plane, and someone says, "What do you do?" Well, for years, 25 years, I'm a senior pastor.
Right. It's my identity.
Boom.
It's what I do.
Buddy, let me tell you, there's an identity crisis going on. I mean, it was crazy. Now where I'm at, I'm flying on a plane the other day. Someone says, what do you do? I said, I run a humanitarian shoe organization.
That's good.
And that's where it's at,
I love it.
And it's fun, but it began, and again, I give you props for allowing me to stand on your stage today. And I know you and I, you've looked at me at times going, what is he up to? And I've done the same thing.
Sure.
But now we launched in 16 R&D. First project was Uganda, 2017. A wonderful man, Charles Butler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I think you know Charles.
Pastor Charles.
And he took shoes over there, and they went well. And then we went to Haiti. And then we did some redesign in 18, really started doing. And things just didn't go as I wanted. We had some thoughts of how we were going to market and this or that. But we've walked through all kind of ways. But every one of those ways have been God just saying, hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on. I had, one of the largest radio stations in Christian radio stations in the world is called K-Love. They had called and said, hey, we'll do 20,000 pairs. And, it was a big deal. And I'm like, I can't, And they're like, well, hold on.
Just couldn't meet the quota.
What do you mean? Well, we created something that we have to train. I mean, it's had to just like the little engine that could.
Yeah.
Well, now if they called me, I could do it. And, we were featured last year on their cruise. And I mean, we came off that Caleb cruise. It was amazing. I mean, it was crazy who we met, what was going on. And then COVID hit, that was wild. But it's been such an interesting process, taking people from all walks of life, going with me into different countries and different places, and kneeling before a child. This is what's interesting. Here's this little Haitian boy or girl, the poorest of the poor. In fact, Colton was with me, and this is why I knew I was on the right track. This was in April of 2017. We were doing a project in Haiti, had 400 pairs of shoes to give out. And we're washing these little kids' feet. They have no name. They're called they're in Renault, Haiti. They don't have names. And that evening, we come back to the mission house, and we were sharing. And what we did, we would just hand a shoe to someone and say, hey, tell us how this impacted you today. And I handed it to my son, Colton, and he began to weep. And I'd never really seen that before. And it moved his spirit. And he began to talk, and he said, this is going to change children's lives. And he just began to share, like, I'm listening to him, and he's not a talker. He's not like his dad.
Sure.
He's not a man of many words. But when he started sharing, as a father, I sat there and said, thank you, God. I don't care if anyone else walks out. I don't care what they think. Here. This is why I'm doing this. Because here's the deal, Pastor Travis. My first sermon I ever preached at 7 years old, my dad put me on a stage in front of 907 23rd United Pentecostal Church of Fairbanks. And I preached Noah and the Ark. And you would think the message was about the debauchery and the flood. It was about this one point. And this has been my point my whole life. When Noah got on the ark, his family was with him.
Yeah.
If I can't minister. Now, it doesn't mean my kids are perfect. We all have kids and they have struggles. But I want to minister in a way that my family is saved with me. And the Lord showed me something when we started this. The Lord said, Darryl, your whole family, and I have different family with different viewpoints. You and I come from some of the same background. But your whole family is going to be involved in this. And I sit here today, 5 years later, and virtually every single family member I have, from conservative to liberal, all backs of life, they're involved. My mother is a monthly shoe hero. She sends a check every month for 3 pairs of shoes, and it blows my mind. I mean, it's one of those things where it has united my family, and we might not all agree on it's the same God, but we might have different variances of God. Their God's a little stricter than mine, Doesn't matter. But we have this commonality, and I have taken all types of people, Orthodox Jews. I had a rabbi call me and goes, we don't do missions, but I got this neurologist in our church that's heard about what you're doing. Would you take some of our doctors? And I'm like, Well, yeah, Rabbi. And I said to this, so I said, well, here's the deal. I said, you got to know this going in. We're going to wash feet like Jesus. Now, he's Orthodox.
Right.
I said, we're going to wash feet like Jesus. We're going to eat bacon. And he kind of giggled. He goes, well, we all eat bacon. We just don't tell anybody. And he said, we haven't figured this Jesus thing out either, you know. So I took these people. My son was with me. We had a ball. We washed feet. I took them to church that Sunday. They'd never been in a Christian church before. But it's just been one of those connections where we've had celebrities, we've had just pastors, we've had people that had walked away from God.
Yeah.
I mean,
I want to talk about that.
Crazy stuff. More. So anyways, that's my 360 is it's about shoes, and we'll show these here in a few moments. But it's really bigger than a shoe.
Yeah.
It's just a connection to a child. And here's my thing is, when we wash their feet, are we just for a moment giving them hope in that impoverished situation they're in? And I've always wondered that evening when they go home and they had no clue we were coming, they're looking down at their feet going, what just happened?
What just happened?
What happened? It's like manna. What is it?
Yeah.
What just happened? And I would pray that that's that point of like, you can point in your life and I can point in my life when there was hope that a coach or somebody spoke a word of encouragement to you. Maybe that's the word for them. I don't know. Yeah. But that's what we get to do, and it's really a powerful, powerful thing.
That's huge. You were talking about this kind of build it as you go when you were at this conference and you introduced the concept here for the first time.
I didn't even have a drawing.
I'm telling you, man, that's what I love about you, and I identify it in myself a little bit as well. I remember, so people don't know, but we're in the sanctuary that we've built here in
Beautiful.
Idaho.
Yeah.
And I remember when we didn't have a lobby, we had just the old church and thank God for that, it was paid for. But we had the old church that had been here since the 70s, maybe even
Love
earlier
that
than
carpet,
that.
man.
The bright orange, fire orange is what I called it.
It's horrible. Flames of hell.
Yeah, but I remember walking the perimeter of the old building and then thinking, there could be a lobby here, and this is where the sanctuary is going to be. And immediately, not having a clue, not even having the people or the finance, to pull off these dreams, these visions that I felt like God was giving me, but not having an idea how it would come about. But we started moving, and I started speaking to the point where sometimes I was like, am I getting too far ahead of myself?
Yeah.
But you know what? This is the cool thing, is that I knew it was the Lord. I mean, if I could identify anything, I knew it was the Lord. I didn't know how He was going to do it, but it was enough for me to start sharing with people. And here we are in the facility. We had 3,800 square foot lobby. Wonderful. Paid for. Little over 10,000 square feet.
Paid for is what's so cool.
Yeah, a little over 10,000 square feet in the worship center here. Paid for, and it's all God. I mean, the only thing that I did was just say, okay, Lord, here we go. And that's what I love about you. And I think there's something to be said about not waiting until all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and having the plan from A to Z, but just saying, okay, God's moving. I'm stirred up. Here we go. God, now I'm out here, and you're going to have to do something. And He always is faithful, always is faithful. And that's what I love about where you are with the My 360 project and just where it's come in such a short period of time.
My dad would always say, son, he said, you need to know what God said to you on the back 40. And what he kind of meant by that was Moses in the burning bush, And I really believe I knew when I was pastoring in Nampa, it was a fun congregation, good people. Man, we had, it was growing. It was really one of those things when I sat with my board in January 2015, a good group of guys and some ladies, I believe. And I just knew it was time to go. this whole, I love pastoring. I mean, I'm good at pastoring. I mean, God allowed us to build a great church in Alaska. I mean, I made my mistakes, and there's people out there that will send emails and say, amen to that. And I'll be the first to say it. But I knew there was something different, and you and I had talked, and we might even had some struggle in our relationship over that, because I had a few people say, you're crazy. I mean, you never said that. You were encouraging.
I hope so.
Yeah, very much. But I think it was one of those things where I just had to go figure it out. I mean, because first off, I had to go from this identity of senior pastor to whatever.
Right.
And
that
then
had been your identity for
25
years.
Virtually 20, yeah. I mean, it was, and it wasn't that, because I had people go, well, why'd you leave the ministry? You have an affair? What was going on? All this and that. And I said, well, I had an affair with my wife. You embezzle money. Well, there's never any money to embezzle. Maybe I should have if I could have. But there's all these speculations, because that's normally the way it is sometimes when you leave something. Because Dad had always said this, son, leave when it's good. Leave when it's going well.
Leave when it's bad.
When I left North Pole, we weren't as blessed as you are being paid off. I mean, we were in multi-million. I think we had $1.8 million debt or something. But it was still people coming, and you pray, and we would knock things down. But I was still going well. I mean, it was one of those deals. So I left at a higher note. I mean, mentally I was struggling. Same thing in Nampa. It was growing. We had some great opportunities. But it was time for someone else to take that charge, and let them deal with it. But I just knew, Travis. It was one of those things. I didn't know what, though. When the coffee thing fell through, I was like, because I really enjoy coffee.
Yeah.
And then when the shoe thing popped up, wow, it's like, this is crazy. This could work. And then the whole Nike connection was amazing. And now we're sitting here, and we're in 13 countries. We just did a shoe give last February in Pakistan. And God, in fact, I'll have this one gentleman on. He just come to the States, but it was crazy. He got spirit-filled through putting a shoe on a child, and I'm not even saying that evangelistical. It's a crazy deal.
What was his background in history?
More Baptist.
Sure. And
But
so
he
is.
and he's with some
He washed some
Pentecostal.
feet.
And he was overwhelmed, and they said he was just he never could believe it was so spiritual. And I had a whole group in January 18. I had this company call me. They said, hey, we have this group of business ladies, and we'd like you to help facilitate a team. And there was Catholic. I mean, there's all kinds of people. All of like attorneys and a professional photographer and all these lady that owns big companies and fancy gals, I guess, and if they're watching, they're going to laugh at this. But I take them on this trip, and it was Colton and I, and we had a blast with them. And God moved, and they said, listen, because we know you're a pastor, could you facilitate kind of a spiritual evening? I said, all right, yeah, I can do that. Kind of a ladies' retreat. I've only had sisters, so I could do it.
You're like, I'm in my element.
So we had some powerful things happen, but the second day in, we were doing what we call a spontaneous shoe give. And right now through COVID, we can't do this, but we just pull over and give shoe. It's fun. It's a blast. You have to be careful where you're at because you can get a mob. But we pulled over, and I noticed on the van was this two ladies. One was an attorney and one was this professional photographer. And I opened the van door, and they were sobbing. I mean... I'm like, oh God, what's going on? Because these are not drama queens; they're all business ladies.
You're ready to line somebody out for hurting these ladies'
what's
feelings.
Going on? And I go, what's happening? And they go, we didn't know it was going to be so emotional. This is just unbelievable. And I look at them. I go, there's no crying in baseball. Get off the van. But it was so incredible to hang out with them, and from that, every single one of those women have been connected to help. Brand ambassador, forward on Facebook, support, but it impacted their lives. Wow. And I was on a podcast some time ago, and the reason the podcast came about was a lady, she's a pretty popular podcaster out of New Mexico. She was having dinner in Spokane randomly, met this gal, the one that was crying, her name was Kaylee, and they started chatting, and so for some reason, this lady asked her, hey, what's been a big thing in your life this last year? And she goes, I got to tell you about this My 360 project. So I get this call out of nowhere from this podcaster out of New Mexico, interviews me. I've done 2 interviews with her now, and it's just been an incredible boon for us.
Sure.
But it's from this lady that was washing shoes, Catholic background. It's just interesting. And then Nicole Mischke, who was a reporter with NBC. She was a model. She goes on this trip. She's in this place with God that she just is. She even admitted it that night. She goes, I know I believe, but man, my dad died, and I just feel this. She does this project. I get a call the day after Easter. Hadn't talked with her since the project in January. This is the same year in 18. Day after Easter, I get a call. I said, hi, this is Nicole Michigan. I go, hey, Nicole, how's it going? She goes, I just wanted to tell you that my husband and I went to church yesterday and we got baptized. Now,
So powerful.
Now, here's what you got to understand, Pastor Travis. My 360 Project is not a Christian organization.
Right.
Now, I've taken some slams for that. I have lost business because of that. But we're faith-inspired. So what keeps it at the center of goology and gospel and Christ-centered is the leadership.
Sure.
You know, but it's like a church. I mean, you could have a different leader come in here. The next thing you know, they're throwing holy water on people. I don't know.
Right.
But the thing is sometimes we get so caught up in a certain mode that we forget that Christ went to Zacchaeus' house and
exactly
changed
right.
the economy.
That's what I was just thinking about.
He look at what he did and all of how he did it. And that's why we have to understand what God calls us to do. And I had a lot of naysayers, but I also had a lot of people behind me. And I knew that if I kept pressing, and it's not been easy. In fact, I told Pastor G the other day, I said, and different friends, I think I might tell you, if I ever call you with a crazy idea like this again, hire me as the janitor of your church or something. But now as I sit here, I every time I just come back from a trip, I get the goosebumps. I love it. I love these little kids. My retirement plan is I have a cotton candy machine. That's my retirement plan one day. I'd go out on the beach and sell cotton candy. So I take it with me sometimes. And I'm at this orphanage prior to COVID, because right now we're not doing it. And we're doing, our mission and doing our thing. And I get the cotton candy. I get them all hyped up on it. And I never forget, I was sitting there and I felt something. And I looked down and here's this cutest little orphan girl. And she's licking the cotton candy off my arm. So I'm like, okay. And I said, just pick it off, The next thing you know, so I'm doing it, and I feel this arm, and she's and it was just, you can't imagine what that feels like, And so, yes, that's international, but now we actually have a domestic project I'll talk about in a bit, but it is so fulfilling. And what I would hope for any believer, anyone, even if you don't believe in Christ, this is the cool part of living for Christ. Yeah. He takes you on these adventures. Serve. Now, let me give you this idea. Don't start by learning how to fly the rocket. Let's start in a little Cessna plane. My friend Dennis, who flies me around. Last time I preached here, he flew in, picked me up in his Learjet. I'm feeling fancy.
Yeah. Big time.
I drive this way. This time I'm going, man, where's Dennis at? This is a long drive. But Dennis didn't start flying jets. He started a little Cessna, And I think it's the same thing with serving. I love grandiose ideas. They're wonderful. But I do have some experience with that. I started with 7, grew a church to a couple thousand. Just start simple and find out what you can do to help somebody. And it might just be one thing a week, but the joy of that type of service will grow and let it compound. Because one of the things I've seen as a pastor, I have people come and they say, this ideas and thoughts. I'm going, okay, have you thought about this? No, we haven't. Failure. Satan wants you to fail. And if he can do whatever he can to shoot that idea down, and you next thing you know, you're in the molly grubs on the seat. Start with something simple. I always tell people, start with just when you go to the bathroom and you wash your hands and there's water all around the sink.
Clean it up.
There
you go.
Anybody who knows me, Jesse Stern, one of my youth, he put it on Facebook the other day. I pick up a piece of garbage in the car. That's incredible service. Just simple stuff. You don't realize how that makes you feel and then grow it from there.
Use your life, make a difference.
So starting the shoe thing I wouldn't ask people to do this on their first attempt. This is something I've grown into, but it's been amazing.
It's interesting, and I've learned through this, a lot of the best lessons I've ever learned were probably through mistakes. I don't know if you learn that way, but I do.
God.
I ended up taking some folks on a mission trip that weren't so
And this is
much,
good.
weren't so much serving in the church, but I'm like, man, let's do missions, and so I took them to Africa.
Yep.
And
I think I was with you on one of those
you
trips.
absolutely were.
Yeah.
And I would say, and I'm not saying that God hasn't done something since,
Yeah.
but initially it did more harm than it did help. It really hurt
100%,
them.
100%.
And one of the things that I've identified is when you go to a nation or a continent like Africa, there are some things that they're dealing with over there that we certainly deal with here, but it's different. Maybe you can talk about that just for a little bit, but it really did. It hurt them. They came back, ended up leaving the church.
Yep. Seen it happen.
I don't believe that they left the Lord, but they left the church, and I believe that they're probably in a healthy spot right now. I would hope so. But
it's called unrealistic expectations.
Yeah.
Because it's like this. I remember as a youth pastor, I had one of the guys, and he's a little older than me, but I was the youth pastor. Man, you got to get me up there, preach. I've got the word. Rah, rah, rah. And so I said, finally I went to the pastor. I said, what do you think about this? He says, all right, Darryl, all right, let him go. Let's let him have a youth service and help him with his sermon. So I meet with him. I said, listen, here's what I want you to do. You come back with 3 points, write them down. You give me some scripture and blah, blah, blah. And okay, I don't know if I got a great memory. I don't know if I need to. I said, yeah, you need to do that, And he supposedly had it. Well, that night he shows up, and I'm like, okay, show me your notes. He goes, well, man, I got it here. God put it, man. I got it. I've got it. I said, no, dude, you can't get up there without something to refer to.
Right.
Well, if God's called me, man, he's going to, he's just kind of defined. So I was going to just say, you just set your butt right there down. But I said, no, I love learning through experience. So I said, hey, buddy, you're up. So, it was services going, we're having. He gets up, and it's his turn. I introduce him, and he's fiery. He gets up there.
He's wanting, and he's got this expectation and this vision of how this is going to
turn out. All the youth
out.
that night, because he didn't feel like the youth were as spiritual as they need. He's getting ready to go. So he reads his scripture, and I already knew what he was going to preach, and I already knew what was going to happen. He reads the scripture, and he looks around. Reads the scripture again 3 times. He does that, and it has nothing.
Nothing.
And then and here's what he says. He goes, "Well, I should have listened to Pastor Darryl." Well, back to you, brother. He sits down. So I just get up and preach his sermon. I'd already, I knew the scripture, and we did it, And afterwards, he comes to me and he goes, "Wow, you were right." He said, that was totally different than what I thought it was going to be,
right.
And I think it's the same thing with missions. So I'll take a lot of people that some won't take, but what we've done is I'll go in more of this will sound different, in more of a secular scenario. Sure. I'm not trying to put them through any spiritual hoops. We're just there serving. It's a humanitarian, service project. And it's fun because even in that, you'll see people like those 2 ladies.
The love of God, man.
Just love on them, things like that. But I can tell you this, in most cases, and I've seen this happen many times, and I'm very careful in a church setting, is there has to be at least some kind of a buy-in prior to going. Because if you think you're going to get to Africa and it's all going to be this, and you haven't done something locally in your church,
right.
or something such as that, the destination is never the place.
Right.
You're the destination.
Right,
you're where you stand.
Yeah.
That's why I sometimes people, they think they're going to build a church, they're going to do that. Dude, if you, like Confucius say, one who says he's a leader and no one's behind
follows.
him is on a lonely walk, and that's, you get that. And so my challenge, without being too much of a smart aleck, is find something local, what your hands find to do good, find that and do it. I was here a couple of years ago, and I love the lady in the church who does the boxes.
Yes.
Samaritan's
Sarah
purse
and
box.
her sisters.
It's
the sisterhood, man.
Her passion, it's wonderful. And one day I would love to have our shoes in there, but I just love, I love coming into churches and meeting people that, you're the family that's in the back right now that helps with this. I love her online. I'll come on Sunday morning and go, hey, it's good to be, hey, Pastor Darryl. I love it when people have a buy-in and they're in and they're doing well with what they do. That's the key. And I think it's like, I don't want to just try to create a position for you. I'd say pray about it. Come in with some ideas. Realize sometimes we're going to shoot them down. It's like shooting some ducks. Maybe we shouldn't do that.
I do that all the time. People will bring, hey, I got an idea, and I will literally tell them this because of just maturity or just. Yeah. I'll be like, listen, I would love to hear your idea as long as you're okay with sharing it and knowing that we may not do it.
Yeah.
But I want to hear it, and it's 8 times out of 10 we end up doing it. But I still like to hold that, that listen, this has nothing to do with you. I'm not coming against you. I just want you to know that not every idea is something that we may launch on. So.
And I think that's what, like I tell pastors, and I've told, get involved in your city. Like if we were launching today, go down, and I told you, go down to the city hall, down to the Chamber of Commerce, get involved. But the Sunday after my father passed away in June of '99, the Sunday after, I preached this sermon. In fact, I in his casket, there's a cassette with this sermon on it. It's called "My Father and the Toilet Brush." Funny sermon to preach a week after your dad dies. But here's how he trained me. This is how he raised me. Son, your greatest sermon's going to come when you're cleaning the toilets. He said, if you can't clean the toilet of the church, doesn't mean you continue to clean it, because you should build a team.
Sure.
But if you're too good to clean the toilets of the church, or you're too good to do something that's at the lowest,
that's right.
You don't ever want to be at the highest, because you will never handle the highest. Mm-hmm. And I've watched so many people get this anointing, and I could name someone today, and you would know them as well, but they have this anointing, but they don't know how to handle it on the stage.
They don't know how to serve.
They don't know how to serve.
Yeah.
And you'll go and you watch. And I was on a trip not long ago, and I had a girl with me that really professes to be an agnostic. But I got to tell you something. She's a servant, man. Mm. I would take her anywhere in the world. Now, when it comes to how she feels about God, you have this issue. But it's just from her experience of bad servants.
Yeah.
Like this. You don't put a prophet at the door of the church as a servant.
Run them off.
You don't put a prophet out there. A servant sets the atmosphere. Mm. Service in a restaurant sets the... Yeah. You can have bad food and still go back because there's good service. Now, it's good to have both. But people need to find what their gender in God is, in a sense, what their calling is, and find that and do it, And I think that's the fun part. Even as we do this, the evening times for me are the most fun. Around our campfire, we pass the shoe, and how did this affect you today? And the most like I said, Colton began to weep. The people who have nothing to say have something to say, because that day something different happened in their life. They touched a child's foot, washed it, looked into their eye, and realized, wow, this could bring hope. And so that's been the development of this. It's unique how the shoe is designed, what it means, what it does. The flat shoe, now we have what we call the Art Mock, which is a domestic product. And I'm having the funnest time of my life, Pastor Travis. And I know we're here, and we're launching into Africa. And I love the fact that your church is behind us, and you guys have supported us. And we're challenging you to be regular. And I'm here to challenge you. Hey, it's time to go with me. I want this to happen, because we had such a connection there. And it's such an amazing place, Africa. Now we're fancier enough. We don't have to sleep on the top bunk. We'll stay in Sheraton Hotel maybe. But the key is my challenge to your church, and I've preached here many times, is go. I mean, the Goology sermon, and people that are going, man, they're growing, but also they're in better moods.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. One of the things I was thinking about, in preparation for our conversation today is that going is really giving.
It is.
And by nature, many people are very stingy. But whenever they begin to give, or they begin to go, they begin to see their lives being used in ways that they never fathomed they could. In fact, I was watching a kind of a documentary, a study, if you will, on children, and the study was this. And these kids were toddlers; they were like a year and a half old, and they were given like a whole bowl of, the best thing that you can give toddlers is goldfish, right?
Oh yeah.
That you give them a whole.
Best thing you give me is goldfish. Come on.
I wish we had a bowl of it, just
Next
right
show,
here.
we need some food here. M&Ms or something.
Yeah,
Skittles.
Yeah. But they give this child, 2 years old, a whole bowl of goldfish. And then on the other side of the table was a little monkey. And of course, the monkey was a hand puppet. And the facilitator was saying, "Hey, how about you share? Would you like to share, some of your goldfish with Mr. Monkey over here?" And they thought about it for a little bit, and they were like, "Yeah." And it was fine. They took a handful and they put it over in Monkey's bowl, and the joy that was on all of these different children that they ran through this. I mean, just the happiness of seeing the monkey's response was like, "Oh, yum, 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 yum. This is wonderful, fantastic." The joy that was experienced on the toddler's face that was giving was incredible. And so I believe that God puts that, within us. And you're not going to, like, some things you're only going to experience when it costs you something, when you sacrifice, when you say, "You know what? Yes, I am blessed, and I'm going to go and do." And so what I love about you and your kind of model is, like, you're not, you don't even have to necessarily be Christian. You've talked to me about people that have lost faith in the church, or maybe they've been wounded or hurt by the church, or maybe they're just not even sure about this whole Christianity thing. And you've said, "Listen, just come and serve." And how God has
and we design it,
moved through that. It's huge.
And it's different because, like for instance, we're hoping, and we know that Grace Church is going to do a shoe give one day. I would then entrust you to develop that team to come, and of course we like to do Zoom meetings and meetings. But I, sometimes I don't. I mean, we get bios on people, and that's kind of fun. So I've kind of studied it as they get off the plane. I mean, sometimes I don't know him until I see him at the airport. Sure. I got a picture of him, and I got a bio, and we've talked. We've been in a Zoom meeting.
You're one of those guys holding the sign, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith. And I've had some of the most interesting people go, and it's I wouldn't just let anybody lead that, because it takes some talent.
Sure.
But I've loved it because also my anointing all my life has been a breacher of the gap. I'm a prodigal son person. I want to see the prodigals and the disenfranchised and those who hate. Mike Freeton, who would possibly listen to this, and I don't want to ever embarrass him, but his belief in God was not as advantageous as most, and could maybe be considered an atheist.
He's a designer for
He was a designer for Nike for 30 plus years. He's got his own company now. Mike went with me on a trip, and it's in one of our videos, and it was one of the most special times. And here's a guy that has, Michael Johnson, the famous friend. He designed his shoes. But a lot of people, I mean, it's pretty incredible. You go into a place and see things. But when he started washing feet, and he says it on his video, but privately with him, he goes, "Darryl, you're onto something, And that the second night in, we watched the movie The Shack, and I'll drop names. Paul Young has become somewhat of a friend, and we watched that. The next morning, I said, "What do you think about this movie?" And he goes, and everybody can have their opinions. You got to realize Paul didn't write that.
You're going to have.
Yes. Paul didn't write that to be a theological dissertation. He just wrote it for his kids,
right? And
it got put out. It's a fun story. And if you ever meet Paul personally and have time with him, wow, he's one of the most amazing guys I've ever met. But anything that came out of it, he goes, "If God could just be that way." And I looked at him, I said, "My God is that way. He is a loving Father." And we started talking, and it was one of those things where he had just come from such a hurtful background in his faith. And over the years now, I've prayed with Mike. I don't know that he's made a profession of faith. I've never tried to force him. But I know this, his God consciousness had changed, and he's become such a good friend. And I've prayed with him before over situations. In fact, one time I joked with him when he asked me to pray. I go, "You're an atheist. I'm not praying." But he's been a good friend, and I love that type of connection. But for me, I just feel like I'm to be a light, to plant a seed in. I get to baptize. I mean, in March, and the trip I'd love you to come on, but in March 4th through the 8th, I'm baptizing a young girl, and it's fun, just the whole connections of who she is to our lead artist. And I'm not preaching baptism. We're just giving shoes. On Sundays I have
Sure.
chapel by the sea of a church, and whoever you are,
Come.
if you're there on Sunday, you're with me, and we do church and hike the volcano, and we have church, and it's fun, and it's an interesting connection. So it is one of those things that I feel like God said, you got to go to Zacchaeus' house, and change the economy. And that's what he did. I mean, think about when he went to Zacchaeus' house, he then looked at his servants and he goes, go back out and give X amount of percent above what I've taken from them.
That's exactly right.
Jesus changed the
Pay it
economy
all
of
back
Jericho.
and give more. Yeah.
And so I think as people go, they learn so much from it. And it is my hope as I come into a church just to incite people to get off their tails and do something for God.
Yeah.
Because that grumbler, and you and I've dealt with it. We don't have time for that. I mean, it doesn't mean we don't have time to counsel and give advice and thought, but man, when you can touch the hem of God's garment and you have that change in your life, then what happens is, as a parishioner, I'm a supporter of you.
Yeah.
And I'm not drawing. I'm gleaning, but I'm not a leech.
Right.
I want to see healthy believers so that when people look into the church, and I'm going to be sharing this, they're like, oh my goodness, I want that. Wow, reconciliation, what's going on? And so the My 360 is one. It's just merely a tool to put a person in a place of what Christ did to his disciples. He washed their feet.
Yeah.
And
I tell you, our church, we made the decision a few years back, and then of course COVID has messed up some things, but we made the decision to go to 2 overseas mission trips.
I was so happy.
And then also to increase our in-country service. And we've always been involved locally, but now we had a plan. We were intentional about this plan. And I'm just telling you, we have had so many first-time, we'll call them missionaries, people that have said, you know what, yes, I'll go. We went to Cuba. We've done a lot of
Dominican,
work. We're doing
right?
a great
The
work
DR.
in the Dominican.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love the
In
DR.
fact, we're finishing a church. We've built a church in the Dominican Republic. We've had it all paid for. Think about this. In the midst of COVID, when finances are really hitting some of these third world countries, even more so, much more so than the United States, we're shoveling dollars in to put people to work to build this church building in this community. I mean, it's easy to get excited about, but people are going and they're just following in love, and they're saying, when can we go back? When can we go back and serve the kids?
Oh, man.
We got involved with an organization that you're very familiar with. It's One Child Matters, and it's taking care of their education and their doctor bills and their food and just really, financing them. And it's changed our church. But we are a church that we've made the decision we want to be multifaceted and far-reaching and getting involved in several things. I want you to be able to, in a few moments, just spend some time and talk about the design, talk about what this means to a child that is there. Once again, they're doing life. They have no idea who. All of a sudden, you show up with your team. You're washing feet. You're putting this nice, shoe on their foot that they can be proud of. They get home and they're wondering what in the world just happened. Tell us a little bit about the shoe and why this ministry, this reach is so vitally important in the world that we live in today.
So one of the things, we've survived COVID, is we have what they call shoe heroes. Very similar to what's happening with the children being sponsored. This is, people sponsor per month, and they become a shoe hero, and it puts a shoe on. If we ask them to commit to a year, it's 12 children. It ends up in helping employ 9 artisans. I mean, it's got a lot of connections to it, and which is phenomenal. A shoe is not necessarily, it's not as important as bread or water. But when you're in Africa, if your feet aren't good, who's going to get the water? It's the kids. So this gives them a protection. But also, I have to tell stories. I'm with a rabbi, a Messianic rabbi friend of mine, and I had taken this to him early on, and he said, Darryl, I got to tell you something about what you do. The prodigal son, when he was in the mud, came to his senses, lost his shoes.
Yeah.
They feel like he lost his shoes in the mud. What do you do when you're out in the pig's pen with a pair of shoes on? Sucks them off. The shoes was his last connection to home, because shoes means sonship.
Sure it does.
So when the prodigal came home, there was the dad. And I share this on one of my videos. And this father washed his feet. It wasn't the servant. It was the father who had reached down, would wash his son's feet, put a shoe on, and make him a son. He said, because James 1:27 is our motto, true religion is taking care of widows and orphans and keeping yourself from the world. To me, if you're a believer and you're not ministering to widows and orphans, I struggle with Christianity. Because that's what true religion is. Widows and orphans can have many different connotations. For instance, prison ministry is so important because there's a father in there, but who's out here? There's a widow and an orphan. Yeah. They need ministry. They need ministry. I mean, you can go widow and orphan many different ways. Sure. So as we were going into this, we realized that, we wanted to create something to go to these places of need. So the shoe, actually, it didn't start this way.
If you will, show it up with the camera here so people can see.
So it didn't really start this way. It actually started put together, but my son Colton, who is a great designer, he created the flat shoe. And that was because we're shipping them around the world. People do fundraisers and they put it in their suitcase.
Right.
Well, what's fun is there's some countries you can't take shoes into. Well, this isn't a shoe. It's an unmade product. So I'm going into Nicaragua, and you're not supposed to take shoes in Nicaragua. They're looking at this going, what the heck is it? It's like manna. What is it? And it's an unmade product, and it's not
what do you tell them?
Well, it's an art project. It's an unmade product. That's what it is. It's
Hanging
the truthfulness of it. Yeah, it can be an earring, whatever you need. But we haven't had many issues with that. But we wanted to go flat. So the shoe is designed, and when we first started it, it's all hand cut. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's traced out in the material sourced in country. This is a insole that has the antimicrobic. This is soles from Mexico. My lead artisan helped source it, but it's all cut out, handmade by men and women. But what's cool is when you come on the trip, if the team comes together and they put the shoe together, and you pull the strings, and so you pull right here. And this clips in the back, so it has some expansion out of the back. Sure. And then the nose comes over, and you lace it, just like you're lacing a shoe. You go through the little marks right here. And let me move this here. I don't know if you can zoom in on it. But you lace the shoe, and I'll give a little, usually I just pull out one. If I was cooking something, I could pull one out that's already cooked. But it's not a cooking show.
Hey, I like that camouflage.
Yeah, the camo's kind of fun. Yeah, it's a fun thing. So this goes through here, and then after this one, this is called a vamp catch. This was actually created by one of our artisans. A lot of the shoe has been innovated by our artisans. They figured it out. This goes here. This comes here. And then it actually has what they call a kettlebell. You can see it right on here. It's just a little catch that holds it. Oh, yeah. Or they can tie it.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden you have this shoe. This is a small. We wash their foot. There's a company that has sponsored our wipes. It's crazy. They're a medical company. I said, listen, I'm going to do 1 million shoes. They go, we're good.
Yeah.
And they ship us these really cool wipes. They're bathing wipes, but they're great for the feet. All we ever need, in fact, they're a secular company. They won't even take a tax write-off.
Is that right?
But we've had them now in 10 countries. And if you go to REI, you can buy them. But they sponsor us. They saw what we were doing, got a hold of us through a friend and said, we want to sponsor you.
Are they okay with you sharing who they are?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They're called No Rinse.
Okay.
And I wish I had one here with me. I'd promote it. But we put them on Facebook. They put us on their Facebook.
That's
we
incredible.
wash their feet. We put socks on.
Yeah.
It depends on the country, if it's cold. And then their foot goes in here. We tie it up. And what's cool about the shoe is it'll stretch out the back.
Right.
You can have some growth there. It'll go out the toe. The vamp catch allows it not to go too far.
Sure.
And then, I was in Nicaragua. They had these porky feet. I'm in Haiti. Sorry if you're Nicaraguan or Haitian. And then these little skinny feet.
Right.
And so what you
Very
do
different.
is you just pull it tight, and it'll go
Yes.
right around the shoe. So about 3 sizes. We don't declare how many. But it's a canvas shoe. We have denim. We have leather. But it's also repairable. So if something happens, it can get fixed. But here's what's cool. Sometimes you'll go around and you'll see the shoe. They'll take it apart because it'll get muddy, like most kids get muddy. And you'll see the shoe hanging, drying out. They'll have it on their,
It's perfect.
it's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of fun. We do different colors. This is canvas. And the artisans, they pick out the color combination. I mean, sometimes if it's too crazy, I'll have to come and say, it doesn't match, polka dots and stripes. But they are so proud.
Sure.
And when we started in Phoenix with veterans from the Dream Center.
Yeah, you're creating jobs.
Creating jobs. We
Amassing
pay
income.
a livable wage that's above beyond where they're at in their country. It's a community, it's a family, and these are people who have come out of some tough situations, crazy stories in their life, and all of a sudden they're doing something that's very holistic. And so when we started in 17 or 16, we hired our first couple of artisans. In fact, they're both still connected to us out of Phoenix. We started in the American market hiring people, and they were in the Phoenix Dream Center, whatever their issues may be. When they got to see, one guy was a big old burly dude and had come, he was a veteran, had some, issues from that, lost his family. What was funny was, and it's not funny, it was incredible. When he got to see the pictures of the shoes going on kids in Uganda, it was like this. It changed him. I mean, and Joe, who's our original artisan, Joe Ruby, it changed his, it was wild. Joe now has a key to my house. I trust that guy. It's crazy what he's done. He's a genius. He's helped design parts of the shoe. But it was amazing. Well, then in Mexico, where our next build center is, and it was and still is, when those young people started seeing in different ages, Gloria's in her 60s, wonderful lady, she runs it for us, they're so proud. When they got to see their shoes on kids in Liberia, they got to see it in Haiti, they got to see it in Pakistan. It's like amazing. And in fact, I have a videographer living there right now for 2 months, videoing and just doing things. And yesterday, Tyler sent me a message and he goes, Darryl, he says, you got to realize you've created family. These people, they adore what they're doing. He said, I've never seen anything like this. And he's a guy that travels in the DR. He travels around and does things. And he said, this is family. He said, the unity amongst your artisans, because we have faith inspired, that's what Glory is, but we're giving them something more than just a job that's a widget. It's something that's changing lives. And they go with us. They wash feet. They get to be a part of it. We're launching a new health initiative this next month, working with them in their physical fitness, in their mental fitness, in what they eat. We're giving them the strength.
Nutrition.
Because in the third world, if we can help people begin to work out and begin to save money, it means they believe there's a tomorrow.
That's right.
And that's a powerful thing.
So good.
And so that's our hope. And so what we want to do is come alongside ministries and just be a widget, because we're not primary. Because I had a pastor one time, I don't want to, we just support primary. We just build churches. I said, I love it. You got to do that.
Sure.
But what if I could put someone to work that would tithe that church?
Sure.
That's what we want to do.
Sustainability.
We want sustainability. And I love what Pastor Robert has done. I want a church that doesn't need money from America.
Yeah.
I want a church sending money to America. Ultimately.
Yeah.
But that's what we do because there's a need. 300 million kids. People support it. Companies support it. We've had Walmart, Target. We just signed out with State Farm. I've had Mormon churches. I've had Catholic. Rotary's big. In fact, the Rotary one of the Rotaries just bought 87 boxes of our art mocks. We have all kind of people. We have churches. During COVID, one of our churches called me and said, hey, we're going to stop. We used to sponsor you $500 a month. We're giving you $1,000 a month. I'm going, are you drunk? Not as you suppose. It's COVID, man. And it's wild to see God doing that. It's like being here, and I'm excited that you guys are becoming more involved with us. But the shoe design, we call it the 360 mock in 4 sizes.
How long will one of these last? I know you've done the R&D on
Yep.
that, and does it last a year? Does it last a year and a half? What do you?
Well, great question. A lot of it comes down to terrain. Mm-hmm. A lot of it comes down to what
The
country
activity
they're
of
in,
the
the
child.
activity. The longest that we've had on a child is 2 years.
Yeah.
Now, again, we don't have the money to hire Nike to put it through their test
Sure.
in 2 days. That's a 2-year wear. We've literally had to have it on a kid for 2 years, and that was in Malawi.
Yeah.
And it had issues, and from that we've made some changes. What we're seeing is about a year. Depends on their foot. In Mexico, the need of shoes is more because there's 1.2 billion kids who have inadequate shoes. So we're kind of in an area of inadequate shoes.
Sure.
Sometimes the kids, it was kind of offensive to me. They're not wearing the shoes after we give it to them. I'm like, wait just a second. Well, come to find out,
They're taking pride in them. Probably,
they're
I'm
on their
guessing.
shelf at home as a gift. We're like, this is, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
You go into
This
someone's
is the
house
nicest
who
thing
collects.
that I own.
Well, it's the first new thing they've ever had.
Yeah, I love
They've
that.
never had anything new, and so I'm like, wear the dang shoe. I mean, I'm getting offended. I have to check my spirit, and you go in and it's sitting in there. Like that's for you to wear. But in Africa, where we're launching into and creating a build center there this year, and we have the African Shoe Initiative, the need there. And literally, Pastor Travis, this is why we did this, was seeing the need in Uganda. Mm-hmm. I mean, in different areas in that whole eastern block of Africa. And now in Malawi, we've done shoes, and we're going into Zambia. The need's massive. Yeah. I mean, there is more, and the shoe, because people say, well, why is the shoe $35? Well, the average cost of an American child's shoe is about $35. But what we've done is we've divided it into 3 places. It's $17 to build the shoe, it's $8 to market it, and it's $10 to deliver. And so, and we've stayed with that because I've had people say, you got to be cheaper, you got to do this, that. I mean, I've had people give me $1,000 a pair. I mean, it depends on who you are. But we've stayed there because it's important that $17, I can build the shoe cheaper than $17. But in that $17, it's the vehicles for them, it's the gas, it's a lot of things that's in that infrastructure. I mean, I can tell you what Nike builds that shoe you have on. If it's Nike, I mean, it's not much, but there's a lot more cost. But what we want to do is be sustainable as an organization. Our $8 is to market, is to do what we do to get this out. It's to, be out on tour with Unspoken or Toby Mac, and they're our, representative, all those things. But the coolest part is the $10. As a pastor, the number one issue for someone to go on a mission trip is money.
Yeah.
There's people in your church that can write the check and go, but mostly they can't. And here's the key for me. I want teenagers to go. Mm-hmm. If a teenager can go on a trip, it changes their life.
Sure it does.
Well, the shoe becomes a fundraiser. So $10, that $10 of the shoe getting sponsored, they set it up on Kindful. It's a pretty cool process. They get out there, and it's people who wouldn't write a check normally, but they go, yeah, I'd sponsor a pair of shoes. Hey, and I'm going to send you a picture of me putting these on kids. Yeah. Next thing you know, you got a coach. I like this as a pastor. I like when the money for missions comes out of the community.
Sure it does.
And not out of the church.
That's right.
And so
everything, the church gets hit for everything.
Everything. So here, you got this mission trip, and you've got someone out by Walmart. You got them out there, and us being the type of company we are. I mean, I just have a lady right now. She's a physical therapist going on a trip. The trip's $900, and she's already at about 90 pairs. And there's money coming in from sports meds and all kind. They're just sponsoring her, and it helps her go, pays her fees, because what it is, that $10 is what it costs to deliver a pair of shoes. Because we don't want to just put it in a box and send it. We want someone, and this is our rule. And this is why we're not with Samaritan's Purse this morning. And I love Samaritan's Purse. I love what they do. I want someone to put that shoe on a child by washing their feet.
Yeah.
And that's we just don't send shoes. I mean, I had someone say, hey, send me 100 pair. We're going to just give. No. We have a way to do it. And I've lost business that way, but I don't want to just dump shoes into a community. I want every child to get a pair, or if we have enough, and they have that interaction with an adult. They have that interaction with a person, because it impacts them and impacts the person, and our shoe then really is meaningful.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'm idealistic, but the idea of it is this is what God told me to do, and so that's a fun thing. And then we'll talk about the art mock. The art mock is a crazy, fun project that you get a box and you get to create wearable art for a child somewhere in the world, and then you get a picture of that child with your little card saying thank you.
Yeah.
And so this came out of COVID. I mean, so what happens is, I'll show you this in a moment. So this came out of COVID. We actually launched this with K-Love, and we did these art therapy projects where we were in country, and we had art therapists, because a lot of these kids come through abuse, and they use therapy using art. Mm-hmm. So one of the guys is, and in fact, it was Mike Freeton a long time ago. He said, "Dear, why don't we have these kids decorate the shoes?" So we started this project where the kids who decorate their own shoe get to wear it. It was theirs, created their own art. Well, then COVID hit, can't do trips, all this stuff is going on. And then I really felt like the Lord gave me the idea and said, "Darryl, put it in a box, send it out to people, kids, whomever, have them decorate it, So this is called the Art Mock box. Okay. Little thin, and it's fun because we wanted it as thin as possible because the shoe's flat. Mm-hmm. So, eventually it'll be in a shoe box, when we get the money. But right now this is cheap through Uline. Give them a little.
There you go. Uline.
So my360project.org. This is a medium. So you order this online, and inside of here you have a pair of what we call art mocks. And this is all canvas that you can draw. It's a certain type of canvas. There's this little bracelet that's actually pieces and parts of the shoe. That's for you to keep.
That.
This is for you to keep.
Design them the same.
It yourself. So you have this instruction manual. There's a little thing on the back. You can practice. Mm-hmm. We send you pins. You get your colored pins that kind of match. Inside is the soul note. This is what's cool. This is what we call the soul, S-O-L-E.
Okay.
You write on here your name, your age, your birthplace, your email, and then a note to that child. Hey, and we've had 2-year-olds with their parents, I don't know what they wrote, gaga goo goo, but we've had some of the coolest little notes. The other day I seen a pair come in from someone 55 years old. It was just a word of encouragement. It was a great pair. And so this goes, and so what you do, here's a little sticker, you can put it on your car, but then inside there's a pre-package, pre-postage. When you're finished, you just take these, you slide them inside of here, you mail them back.
Right.
And with the card, be sure that's in here. We get it. And there's a number that goes in the card. It gets logged in. Then this goes somewhere in the world within a period of time. I mean, COVID slowed a few things down. We take it, and then all of a sudden, after the project, you get this picture of your shoes with this little thank you card.
It's incredible.
On a child. And I'm telling you, Torrin Wells, the famous saying, he's a cousin. He's my cousin.
There you go.
His son did one some time ago, and it was the coolest deal, We've had celebrities like that. We've had all kind of people. And the wildness of it is, I had a pastor call me the other day, and Pastor Brad, he goes, "Darryl," and he goes, "Your evil plan's working." I said, "What do you mean, man?" He goes, "My kids got that picture back," and he said, "They want to go on a shoe trip." I said, "Absolutely, man." I said, "Whatever you want to call it, that's what we want to do." If I can plant seeds into children's life to go, because that's when it started with me. I was 7 on my first mission trip in Nana, Alaska. And in fact, here's the coolest thing, Pastor Travis. The second largest humanitarian shoe company in the world is called Samaritan's Feet. You got to Google it. You got to look at it. The CEO is named Manny Ahamai. He was one of those little Nigerian kids that someone put shoes on him.
Right.
Grown up now, very successful, good friends with Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley, all those guys, has Samaritan's Feet. Him and I connected. I'm leading them to Alaska. They're going to do the art mocks. The little native kids are going to decorate the art mocks. They go with me to Uganda in May. But we're going to put shoes on every person in Nana. The first place I went on a mission trip, I get to go back.
You guys have done coats and everything else.
We've done jackets, all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I get to go back to the first little village I went to with Samaritan's Feet and My360 Project. And we're putting on, I think there's 300 and something people in that village, and we're giving everybody a pair of shoes. We're going to Minto, Alaska, which is one of the first places I got to preach, and we're putting shoes on every kid there. And Samaritan's Feet is committing over the next few years to put shoes on every native in Alaska.
Wow.
That's the cool stuff. And Manny, he's got a wonderful book out called Soul Purpose, and he's become a great friend. But he was one of those little kids that got a pair of shoes and ended up getting a basketball scholarship and played for North Dakota. Mm-hmm. Amazing story. Little old Darryl from North Pole gets to meet him, and we've become great friends. Their logistic manager went on a trip with us in November, Whitney, and love her. And so they've booked me. I'm leading 2 of their trips to Alaska this year. We've sold out both of them, May and July. And we're doing their shoes. They have domestic shoes. They have deals with Nike and Adidas. But then our art mock gets decorated. We take it to Africa because we created this for Africa, different places. And so it's been fun. But this right here, this is one of the this is an 8th grader. Mm-hmm. Out of my,
that's an incredible design.
It's called the drip shoe. Yeah. It's a little 8th grader, and if you can only know the story of the little girl who did the shoe, it's powerful. But she put this together, and we did. This is one of our first ones. I said, well, let's see what kids can come up with, and that's what she come up with.
Yeah,
it's called the drip shoe.
Yeah, I was thinking that this was professionally printed.
Nope.
But
nope. She got the pins from us, and we set her up, and she
then for her to get that picture back with her note and the smiling, face.
In any age can do it. Like we have right now a group of ladies, and they are putting on art mock parties, and they get the art mock box, we ship them in, and they just have a night where they're just doing missions. Sure. And it's a group of, it's amazing. And then they get a picture back, and it's a fundraiser for them to go, or, it goes to the My 360. So this is a COVID deal. I mean, it's, and that's the crazy part. In the middle of COVID, look at what God's done in your church. Look at what he's done in ministry, because we pivot.
Yeah.
We don't look down to the earth, we look up to God.
Let me share something just about that. So in the middle of COVID, the Lord puts on my heart, Travis, and I, like you, I have built some relationships with many of the same people, but the Lord told me, listen, you need to raise money to send Moses, Naomi Moses.
I love it.
He's buying some property in Uganda, starting a church. I've got a really
dear friend. And I'll see him in
May. Yeah, I'd really like to go. He's asked me to come preach at his conference that he wants to do. But then I've got a dear friend that pastors multiple churches, oversees them in the Philippines, Pastor Ariel Abrigina. And then I really kind of taken in. He's kind of like a brother son. In the Lord. His name is Haslam Troport, and he was a Haitian that lost some of his family in the earthquake that they had, and now he's in the Dominican, and so we've been supporting him. And anyway, the Lord said, I want you to send these guys some money, and then, oh, by the way, I want you to raise the funds to finish the church that you've started in the Dominican Republic.
Wow.
Now, and I knew that this was clear, above and beyond the tithe that was going to be taken for that day. And so I'm in the back room, I'm in the green room with our leadership team, and I'm like, guys, listen, the Lord's impressed on my heart, to go big and to ask for a large sum of money, which was about $9,000 above and beyond the tithe, and for us that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, we prayed back there, and we have 2 services here, and I just kind of put the fleece out there, and I just said, this is what I feel like the Lord's asked us to do, and this is what it's going to go towards, and told them about the relationships that we have with these 3 different individuals, and then the church. And isn't it just like the Lord? I'm going into this thinking, wow, Lord, that's a tall order.
Yeah.
And so, Lord, we need $9,000. We need $9,000 above and beyond the tithe, because we still we gotta keep the lights on and all that good stuff, which you're familiar with. And wouldn't you know that $20,000 came in.
Amazing.
In fact, it was 15 initially, and then there continued to be more.
Wow.
And so
That's the way God is.
yeah,
Doubled it.
that's the way that the Lord is. And so out of that, I also get to send you home with a blessing as well. I
Love
mean,
it.
we're excited about just what you're doing and what God's doing. But this is the cool thing is in the middle of COVID.
Yeah. See,
You know
that's
what I
it.
mean? Like
I know.
in
I'm
the
with you.
middle of the
I'm with you.
hardship, the Lord just shows up in a big way.
Yeah.
In a big way like that. And I just want to say, thank you to the Lord, but I also want to say thank you to faithful people
Yeah.
that are just like, you know what, I can get
Powerful.
involved and
Yep.
I can make a difference.
Yep.
And my little or my big, whatever that is, it matters.
Yeah.
And that's what I really hope that, people are encouraged by this message today, but I also hope that they're challenged.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To do a little bit more. Before the broadcast, you had talked about, boy, if people could just move the needle.
Yeah.
Talk about that just for a little bit.
I think it's like one of the things I'm going to talk about my 360 in this, but it's anything. I love about my 360 is I don't need someone to sponsor 1,000 pairs. Just sponsor a pair.
Right.
But it's in your life. Just move the mark a bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Matthew 28:19 says to go into all the world, preach the gospel. A part of that is I heard this at a missions conference some years ago. It says, some go, some stay,
Right.
but all must obey.
Yeah.
So whatever that means for you,
I guarantee I can tell you what it means.
it is you need to just and let 2021 if it's just a nudge.
Yeah.
Let it be that. I mean, who are you guys working with for the monthly for children?
One Child
One
Matters.
Child.
Yeah.
Great ministry. It's
organization.
been I've seen them out on the road.
Just a real plug, just real quick. It's just like you. The overhead is so minimal.
Yep.
That's one of the things that I love is like the mission is the mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the thing is just sponsor a child.
Yeah.
Sponsor a pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Like for Africa, for us, our vision right now is 300 pairs a month.
Yeah.
I can, I'm able, you would laugh. I mean, we started Mexico with not close to that,
Sure.
I mean, it was hardly anything, but we got to do it, and the thing is find something, get behind it, be blessed in it, but it's not about lowering your expectations, but also allowing God to inspire your expectation.
Wow, I like it.
And don't, because I remember one time a guy come to me and goes, man, Pastor D, if you failed God, I would fall. I would backslide. And I'm like, hold on, man.
Yeah.
If I
Don't
failed
put that on
God,
me, bud.
I would hope you're the one to help pick me
Right.
up.
That's good.
Because there's this expectation of this or that. And I think we just need to move the mark. And my wife and I think I can say this because it's going to go public soon, but we're pretty comfortable in Phoenix. I call, you and I mess with you in the wintertime. Sometimes I'm playing golf and you're freezing. But the Lord, I'm telling you, and I feel peace in this, and I know it's God. He's called us back to Idaho, and about
I'm so
that.
excited about it, too.
I'm excited to be closer to you, and we're going to be in Middleton. We're building a house there. That's a pretty tall order in one sense, but I also know God's in it. It's wild. I mean, I feel a peace that passes all understanding. It's an agitated peace a little bit as I'm here right now, and it's cold, and it's 60 where my wife's at.
Yeah.
But it has nothing to do with weather. I just want to be, Dad always said, when God kisses the earth, son, I want to be right in the middle of the smack.
Yeah.
And I know God is leading us in this direction. I know that we're going to be...
Well, you don't want to miss it.
I don't want to miss it.
The leading. You don't want to get ahead of it.
I don't want to
miss
get
it.
ahead. I just want to be a part of it, And I always said this: I want to be a little part of something big.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be a big part of something small. And I think with my 360, God is just opening new church doors. Got a call from a pastor the other day. He says, Darryl, I want you to come share this, And I haven't pushed it. I haven't really pushed it on you.
No.
I knew I needed to develop some things. And when God laid it on your heart, I mean, you blessed us with an offering sometime. I mean, you've always been a blessing. But I knew when God laid it in your heart, you'd be there, and it would be time.
Yeah.
And it's time. And so I thank you for the opportunity. But I just challenge people that are watching this. Just let the mark get moved this year.
Yeah.
Let the water rise a little bit. You know, those watermarks that you see. Find out. Take that step of faith. I mean, I don't care if it's, you know, underwater basket weaving. You know, get involved and get your hands messy and help out in this church. There's a lot to do.
Start in the local church, in your local
Start
community.
local to global. To me,
Yeah.
you do not start internationally.
Yeah.
You start locally and learn. One of the things I've loved about this church is I love your fun run that you have with the police.
Yes.
You know, that is so important. There's so much. You drive through nativity scene and all that. I mean, I'll maybe come to that this next year if it's heated. But there's a lot to do here. But then sometimes it's at the soup kitchen. I mean, it's Idaho Youth Ranch. I think they're around here. Find a place. But know this, you're going to get offended.
Yeah.
You're going to have false expectations sometimes because it's like missions. It's hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, listen, hold on. You got to, you know,
Level
first
your
off,
expectation. Just go with the flow.
be
flexible.
Be flexible, fluid. Realize that sometimes we don't do things that are on the plan because you don't know what just happened, and I don't need to tell you what just happened at this moment.
Yeah.
You know, I was at the mission field not long ago, and one of our cats got killed. And oh man, I mean, and so I just had to, we buried it, put it, you know, it was sometimes later we let some people know, but it was like, we didn't need a seance over a cat getting killed at that moment, you know. I was driving one time in the mission field and I seen the dog running out in the road and I had a bunch of ladies on the van and that dog was about to get hit and it did. But right before it got hit, I go, hey, what's that? Ow. And everybody's looking out the window and bam, that dog got hit. And only one lady saw it and she was like, ah! And I go,
Yeah.
she was the leader. And I go,
Yes.
because sometimes you don't want to know what's inside of the hot dog.
It's true.
You know, and you don't want to know certain things. But when it's time to know, you'll know. And it's little by little, here a little, there a little. And I think this is a year for everyone that considers himself to be a believer to just get moved and get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you're totally comfortable in what you do,
Something's wrong.
it's time to get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, I'm speaking at your church, and I got to tell you, I've been doing this for years, but I was up last night at 3 a.m. When I take it serious, I get nervous. I mean, I've never not. I've been in front of 55,000 people one time, nervous as ever. You know, I've been in front of one and nervous as ever.
Sure.
Dad always said, son, the day that you're so confident and you're not nervous, you need to set down.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have
important.
an awe and you don't have, you know, so
The work is important.
don't think if you come on a My 360 trip, it's going to be the best. There's going to be issues,
Sure.
you know, but
You know,
I just don't want you to come home and lose out with God. I want the experience to draw you deeper. And real quick, back to those people you were discussing. Again, false expectations.
Yeah.
And it happens because Satan will come in with an offense.
It's true. One of the things that you said is some go and some stay, but
All must obey.
all must obey. And one of the things about, I think the mission field, whether it's local or international, you know, you get busy and do something. We've got a gentleman in our church that went on a Samaritan's Purse mission trip.
Is that the one in Nashville? They went down.
Yes.
I love that. That was cool.
7 or 8 guys changed their life. They're
Yep.
rebuilding some flooding and anyway, super powerful. Well, one guy that went, it was his first mission trip, and right now he is going to be the next leader goes on mission, leading another group of guys. And so this is what I've always heard, and I always tell people that, especially on the international trip, you're either going to go and fall in love with it. Well, you're going to fall in love with it regardless, but you're either going to go and say, man, this is who I am. And I think about Ashley, you know, my daughter Ashley very well.
Oh, yeah.
I took her when she was about 15 to Nicaragua. And even though there were tremendous hardships and she doesn't like spiders and bugs and snakes and they had all
Nor
of
do
that.
I.
Yeah, she fell in love with it to the point where, you know, I looked at her and I told her that missions is going to be a part of your life for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
To the point where when she was being courted by her now husband, Bo, I told him, I said, you need to understand that missions is going to be a part of her life for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
And so you need to know that. She will not be able to get away from that.
Yeah.
And so it was awesome. I was able to
Didn't
take
she go to
him.
DR with
he
you?
did.
Yeah.
And he fell in love with it as well.
Yeah.
And so it's beautiful how now they are goers. But even if you go that first time and you're like, you know what, it was powerful and it was cool, and man, I believe in the work that God does by somebody going. But you know what, that's really not for me. I'm going to stay. 10 times out of 10, I've seen people say, you know what, I'll support somebody else in going. I'll get behind it.
Yep.
But, and so some people are called,
They're
to
cheerleaders.
finance it, to cheer
that's
them
it.
on. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Not a bit.
But I encourage everybody, and this is why we started with the 2 international trips a year. Go at least once and serve and do. And so this is what I would like to do. And I already knew this prior to, us getting together, but I'd like to get the details on this, and we will do we're going to bang the drum, and we're going to see what we can come up with here in the next few months. And then what we'll do from there is we'll figure out a trip that we can go on so that some of our own people can come and wash feet and put the shoes on the children. But I think Uganda for us is the ground that we're supposed to be, we're supposed to be working in.
And that's my invitation to Grace and you as the pastor is we need partners for what we're doing there, and I think the need is great. We're working with Bible school kids. I mean, think about this. So let's just say you're sponsored shoes that are Shoe Hero. That money goes into an account. Here's what's so cool. We're able to then take Bible school students who love to do crusades.
Right.
And they don't have the money.
Mm-hmm.
We can then say, hey, I need you to take 100 pairs of shoes.
Yeah.
Well, 100 times 10 is what? $1,000. That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
There's cost that's involved with that, but we pay their gas. They get a stipend. They go do the crusade, and they do the shoes. And they have a crusade. I mean, this becomes a sustainable source. That's why we right now, if we are at 300 pairs, that's $3,000 a month that's set aside to do gospel moving things. But we're utilizing local teams because I love that. We learned that during COVID. We had our local teams. Our shoe heroes were helping sponsor. It wasn't me getting to go. It was our local teams, and they were going out. And it's really, really cool. And I agree with you. I think it's a God thing that we're here. And we're launching Uganda. It's where we met, and I would love to see the church come and you guys see Moses and do a crusade, build a church, but help us create jobs for these believers, these ladies that are going through situations, and there's so many build centers. It's really cool because they get educated. We don't do this, but the ministries do. They get educated in finance and microloan, and they get a machine, and they have their own 2 feet standing on, and they have their own business,
Well, they're building homes and able to
love it.
Elevate their income, start giving to their local church, which is something that, my goodness, we've been talking about that
forever,
for a long time. How do we help people?
This is a widget to do it.
Yeah,
this is a widget, So I conclude with this is, I preached this when I was here, but it's just so important for the goology I call it the going and gone. Mm-hmm. Until you've gone, you can't have a testimony.
That's good.
We go, at the going, but that gone. Get to the gone.
Yeah.
I think that's the key is wow. I mean, good, bad, or ugly. I mean, there's all kind of experiences. And as we would put something together, I mean, it's a stretch to go to Uganda. It's not, I mean, it could be someone simply comes to our VG, it's a little easier. But Uganda, wow, it changes everything, especially if you drink the water.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll get that. Everything. It's a great dietary thing. But yeah, get to the gone. Go locally. We call it, it's local to global. You have your church, you have your community, you have your county, you have your state, you have your country, you have your continent, you have the world. Whatever you find, do it and enjoy it. But I just, I challenge people to move the mark this year.
Yeah.
Move the level.
Yeah.
Talk with Pastor Travis and get her done.
Get her done. I want to just address everybody here just real quick as we bring this to a close. You've got one life to live, and I think the most tragic thing that can happen at the end of a person's life is for them to have regrets.
Yeah.
And I just want to encourage you, man, you've been given the day. Today is a gift. And the decisions that you make today are really going to shape and form the rest of your life. And I've come to know this in 50 years. I'm a slow learner. But the best thing that you can do is serve people. And by serving people, you serve the Lord. And this My 360 project, as we are involved in so many things, this is another area that we as Grace Church, and who knows, maybe you're not even a part of Grace Church, you're just coming across this, but this is an area that really is making a difference.
Yeah, thanks.
And it's a real opportunity for us. And I can just tell you this, that you'll never regret being generous. Like, a heart of generosity brings about a celebration in somebody's life unlike anything else that you can celebrate. When you see, when you go, when you are a part of something bigger than yourself, what happens is you begin to see, wow, my life really counted and my life really made a difference. You know, we would like to think that, you know, just the way that we live, you know, by default makes a difference. And many times it does. But sometimes when you set aside yourself and your comfort, and you sacrifice, and you step out in faith, and you are a part of something, you know, small, you know, you're a small part of something big, man, the gratitude and the thankfulness and the humility that comes from doing that, it's unexplainable. Every single mission trip that I have gone, where I've left this country and gone to another, I can always tell you this, that I feel like I've always been more ministered to than anything that I've ever done.
Yeah.
So I come home with more than what I've left. But I also have this incredible appreciation for just what God is doing globally. Because every single time that I go, you know what I see? I see people just like myself that love the Lord just like I do. And there's a unity, and there's a bond, and there's a brotherhood, and I'm just telling you what, we say this all the time, but I think it gets lost in familiarity, that we're better together, and that we need one another, and we need to be in community. And I'm just saying, it's things like the My 360 project that help bridge the gap in so many different levels, things that we haven't even talked about here today. But there are bridges being built, and I really feel like, you know, for those that are tuning in this episode, I'm certain that it's for a reason. Consider it. That's all I'm saying, is just consider how you might get involved. And I just want to say, I appreciate you, my friend. You
Thanks
are
for
a
having
dear
me.
friend, and
So are
and
you.
I've had a lot of fun with you
Yeah, we
today,
have. Thanks.
And let's see what God will do.
I love it.
All right.
I'm ready.
Anything that you want to say in closing?
No, I would love people to experience this, but in anything, just find what you're good at.
Yeah.
And do it well. Realize you can make a mistake, but get up one more time than you fall. And that you said it earlier, community is so important. And that's some of my greatest of friends have come through mission trips. Mm-hmm. I just, to this day, people that I have enjoyed and have spent time with and helped off the floor of the concrete, or you pulled me out of the corner of falling off a drum seat. We both have our falling stories,
that's
you know.
Exactly right.
But it's so important because the world needs to see givers. The world needs to see generosity. They need to see God's light and love come through us. And this is just merely a widget. It's just a portal to that.
Another opportunity.
It's just an opportunity.
And God will use it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool,
Awesome.
man. Love
Thanks,
you, bro.
my friend. Love you too.
Yeah.